Welcome to J&N. This week, we got the first episode up last week, and we started kind of talking about, which direction we wanted to go. And we were talking about some of the best podcasts out there. And I had, serendipitously had gotten a call from somebody that was asking me about, their opinion with this guy that they had been seeing. And they had, been using, words like, transparency and stuff like that. And they were asking me about this. And you and I were trying to do some show prep, and so this story kind of molds together in a way that when we were looking at some of the best, there's this show called Call Her Daddy.
Call Her Daddy.
And let me tell you something. I hadn't heard this show. If you haven't seen this, we're going to link it into here, and we're going to hit some of this. I want you guys to hear a little bit about this. I'm going to plug it in. You can drop in here, and we'll play a little bit of this. And then I know, Monte, you had heard some of this. I had listened to it, and I was like, oh, my God. It's sort of like Howard Stern from the female's perspective, and it's all about sex. And, I mean, she doesn't hold back on any of it. And you're talking about, when we're looking at some of these podcasts, she was like the number 8 podcast.
Yeah, on one list I saw her in the top 5.
Yeah, and I couldn't believe it. And I had thought that, when we start looking about all the things that are going on and which directions that we want to go, you kind of look at, what is really good out there, especially in the podcast world. That is kind of one of the interesting ones that I always thought that, at least from a guy's perspective, right? We talk about all these things, and we talk about all these dating apps, and we talk about all the things that happen inside our life. It's nice to hear, the other perspective, because a lot of times, we don't talk about as guys, especially with the detail, some of these girls. And, the Call Her Daddy thing is unbelievable. If you don't know the story behind Call Her Daddy, it's part of Barstool Sports. And so she kind of started over there. And I don't think she has a ton of episodes up. I think she's got, about 500,000 subscribers.
Yeah, she has 105 episodes.
Yeah. And it's not, I think she's been around, a year roughly? Is that, anyway, I don't know the whole story because I just heard one episode of it. And when I heard one episode, I was like, this is actually really good.
It had me blushing at the Roman commercial. I was like, wow.
Let's play that commercial right here.
Oh, boom. You're fucking splooging in that pussy or splooging in that asshole, and it's like a disaster. You have no dick game.
So when I heard that, I was like, what is this? what am I listening to? And I'm telling you, it's awesome. And here was the thing. So I get this call, and she is talking to me about this guy that she's trying to see, and he's talking about, his girlfriend's coming down to see her. and so I was confused. I'm like, wait, what's going on? Because you're trying to explain to me this guy's coming down and who's he staying with and this girl. And so I kind of get it all sorted out. And finally at the end, the guy's somewhat living down there, and he's having his ex-girlfriend come down to stay with her.
Wow.
And so he's trying to explain to her in this moment, hey, I've been fully transparent with you. I'm not down with this. I'm trying to push it away, or I'm trying to give it a break. And she's not really picking up the emotional, the whole thing.
The hints.
Right.
Yeah.
So, she's like, well, Jay, what do you think about this? And I'm like, well, I don't want to be the one to hit you with the emotional 2x4. But
somebody does. Somebody has to.
Yes. He's not that into you. If he is having his ex-girlfriend come down there to stay with you, it's probably not the right thing.
Yeah. And
so inside of this conversation going, she starts telling me about Call Her Daddy. And, when you listen to the show and you listen to what they're talking about and you listen to the perspective of not only if you haven't been through therapy, if you get a chance to go through therapy, what it brings to the table, right? It brings this super honesty that you can talk about not only things with life, but things sexual in the bedroom. And with her, I mean, everything's on the table. I mean, so it was great.
It's kind of unbelievable how much she really lays out there.
I
was surprised. I've
yeah,
never heard anybody talk like that.
Right.
Woman.
And I sort of was shocked because I kind of go, I took a step back because I think sometimes when we do stuff like this, there's a little bit of stick, or we become kind of a character behind the camera and we do things because we need to do We're trying to do something for the show. And so when I'm listening to her, I'm trying to actually sort out what she's saying and what she's really doing. And she was talking about going on this trip in this particular episode.
Yes.
And so in this episode, she was going to go and she's going to stay in New York. And in this time it's staying in New York, she was taking a trip to see another guy.
But
So
she has a date in New York before the date with the main guy that she's taking the trip for.
Right. The night before.
Yeah.
But, here's the thing that sort of, kind of sparked all this conversation was, I was telling somebody else that you kind of get into this dating world and you could be dating, maybe 2 or 3 people.
I've been married 23 years, man.
Yeah, so you don't have a clue. Out of it. You don't have a clue what's going on with the whole dating apps and everything else and how it kind of works. And I don't think a lot of people do. And so it was a little bit interesting from the female's perspective, because I think a lot of people end up dating in this kind of you end up 2 or 3 people, and I don't even know if you want to call it dating. I think
there'd be a pond, small pond.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to her and what she was talking about, and I thought, well, I don't think it's really unfair to in this particular, if you go have a drink with somebody, is that a date? I don't consider that a date.
It is if it has romantic intentions in the long term.
Dude, you're married. What are you talking? No. Nobody goes on a first date and be like, I have romantic intentions for you in the long term. What?
Well,
no.
So it's just a drink.
Yeah. Okay. I think you start out. That's the way that
So you're telling me I can ask girls out for a drink and I won't get in trouble?
Well, that's on. I wouldn't think it would be a big deal if you're going to go meet as friends.
Oh, I'm going to try that and say Jason said you could do it.
Yeah, you deal with your wife on that one. That has nothing to do with me. But when you listen to her perspective as she goes through this, you kind of you sit there and you have these kind of conversations in your head, like for me, I don't think it's always a huge deal if a girl's out there dating. When I say dating 2 or 3 people, you're kind of feeling out. Who do you like? What do you? There's a certain time period that you're okay with that. Like, I think it's fine to go out just because you're trying to figure out, all of these parameters, and you might not know yourself. I mean, if you had to hit the ground running after 23 years,
oh my goodness,
it's kind of a nightmare. And then, depending on what age group you're in, if you're 20s, 30s, or 40s, each one of those has its own, particular stigmas, and whether there's kids involved or there's no kids involved, or if there's jobs involved, or 100 other aspects that go along with that.
Yeah.
And she gets unbelievably graphic throughout the whole thing, which is I think is great. I think it's fine. I mean, we're gonna plug some of it in here,
okay,
and we're gonna drop it in.
So this is definitely going to be an explicit podcast. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Yeah.
So
it's
just for those thinking this is a Disney podcast.
No, it's not going to be. And I think we talked about some of the content and where we were going with this. We need to kind of play around with some of this real authentic stuff that you hear it from the girl's perspective, and I think it's good.
I think so too. It's like I said, 23 years married, and this is the first time I've really heard a woman talk like this so bluntly. And the real question I have for you is if you're dating 3 people, if a woman is dating 3 guys, and what if dating by that means sex? So the stigmas in my day anyway of a girl out there having sexual relations with 3 guys at one time, not at the same time, but within a couple of days and stuff like that, would have been labeled, I suppose, a slut.
You got to be careful here, because this is if a guy does it, he's a hero, and if a girl does it, she's a slut. And so I sort of back off on that stuff, because I I think it's a 2-way street, and so it doesn't bother me as much. I think it kind of depends on how you label, quote unquote, your sex and your whole relations on where you're at with everything. So it doesn't, it wouldn't bother me a ton, I guess. Now I'm not saying
you don't want to know, though.
You don't want to know, but you also don't want to do this for a large period of time either, right?
Sure.
You kind of come in, and it's sort of kind of a mutual thing, where somebody comes out. It's not hidden behind your back, where you come out and say, hey, you know what? Listen, just full transparency. there's a couple of the people I'm talking to. And,
you don't say, we're just doing it missionary position and stuff like that.
We don't get into the sexual details of
Okay.
being like, you know what, I was with this girl last week and she got on top of me and she wrote it this way because she was listening to Call Her Daddy.
Well, Cowboy's the best.
Right.
Anyway.
You don't want to be like, hey, come here. I want you to try something, but listen to this podcast first. So in kind of what I was doing, so when this girl had reached out to me, I'd heard this Call Her Daddy because I was explaining this whole thing to her about like, sometimes guys will date 2 or 3 people, and so are girls. And it doesn't mean that necessarily they're always having sex. It doesn't always mean that they want, even a long-term relationship. Maybe it's just a drink. Maybe it's just companionship. Maybe it's 100 other things that happen with that.
Yeah, loneliness, right? Yeah, especially with COVID and everything. People are lonely.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I get done. We have our chat, and I get up the next morning and I'm doing our show prep and I'm trying to think about what we're going to talk about and how we're going to forge everything. And so I get to the Call Her Daddy stuff and I get excited because it was very relevant to the conversation that we have. So I take it and I copy it and I send it to her. And I'm like, yes, this verifies exactly what I was going to hold on and wait for this, because I didn't look at the title when I sent it. I didn't look at the title when I sent this thing. And on the title, when I sent it to her, right at the top, it says Roadmap to His Asshole. And
Wow.
I went, oh no!
She probably thinks you're hinting at something there.
I'm like, here I go. I just sent this. We just got done talking, and we just had this conversation about dating multiple people, and I now send you Call Her Daddy Roadmap to Her Asshole.
I got to tell you, that title, it grabbed me too. Yeah.
Yes, I looked at that and I'm like, oh man, there's no way out of this one.
Did she listen to it?
You know what? I'm not sure if she got the link because I never got anything back. Or maybe she did get the link and saw the title and be like, what type of damn freak are you? Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, you might have one less friend then.
Yeah, I probably won't get a phone call back on that one. So I was just like, yeah. But we weren't dating or anything. She was just calling me as, hey, what do you think's going on with this other guy that I'm seeing? And,
Well, that's a weird pretense to begin with. I mean, why is a girl that, you may have interest in, may not, asking you for relationship advice about another guy?
Well, she wanted
to begin. That's weird.
Well, she wanted the guy's perspective because the guy was using kind of these hot words like transparency, right? And I just kind of went, oh, really? I have to explain this? Like, if a guy's looking at you and starts using words like transparency, it means he's not interested, or he's seeing 3 other people, or he's going to send you a podcast that says Roadmap to Your Asshole.
Yes.
So there you go. I kind of looked at that, and after that conversation, I'm like, oh man,
maybe you should have blurred that, or
I don't, maybe I should have read the title, but it was sort of, you kind of you got into the podcast and, the Call Her Daddy thing. And I had heard, a lot of girls love that show. Believe it or not, it's a whole thing. I mean,
ironically, episode 105, which is the one right out after the Roadmap to His Asshole, is titled Goodbye.
Oh.
So maybe it's a goodbye thing for her now. She can send that back to you saying goodbye.
Thanks. I don't need friends like you that say Roadmap to my asshole.
Yeah.
It's not the type of person that I'm looking for, exactly. So
it is a catchy title. I have to be honest, I didn't listen to the whole thing. It was a little much for me, I guess.
Have you let your wife listen to that yet?
I didn't even tell her about it.
Well, you need to tell her about that. You need to tell her about that. You need to be, you know what? You need to text her Roadmap to Your Asshole and then see how that one goes. After 23 years, you're the one that should be sending that text to your wife, not me. Like, you send it to your wife and be like, hey, check this out. If I send it over to her, she's like,
oh yeah,
Monty, why is Jason sending me this?
I'm typing right now. I'm sending it to her right now.
Oh, well, that's great. We'll see how she reacts to that.
Live, she'll come down here and scream at us. What are you guys doing down here?
And when we looked at it, part of and this sort of segues a little bit into kind of the greater podcast that she was doing as part of Barstool Sports.
Mm-hmm.
And
hilarious.
I think
great.
When you kind of look at from the guy's perspective of what Barstool Sports is doing, I think Barstool Sports does an awesome job on the women's side of things, where they get to break things down, and it gets away from kind of this the stigma of ESPN and ABC and NBC, where everybody has to be so damn perfect 24/7, and you're confined by so much of the network stuff. And when we have that network stuff, you're restricted in a lot of ways. And so that to me gets very difficult.
Gotcha. My wife just peeked in here and shook her head no.
Oh, I saw the door open over here, and I went, uh-oh.
You're like, uh-oh.
And I was like,
I'm guessing she's taking the title, much like your friend did. I'm guessing she takes the title literally, and I'm probably on my own for lunch now.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do?
That's all right. If I can't
you know,
send her a dirty thing after 23 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's probably not the first thing that you've done.
It's not.
So, and we could talk about that. I think she'd probably, she might shoot you on that one. Be like,
maybe. I have the guns down here. So.
Yeah, this whole Van Zetten thing, that's not going to work out for us. No.
Yeah.
But, when we look at the Barstool Sports and we talk about, what they were doing, from the girls' perspective, they've even kind of reached out into, I think the relationship side and the bars, in the sports side of things. So I think there's really a lot of good things that start to happen there that I think is interesting from a lot of different perspectives.
Absolutely. I like Barstool Sports on TikTok because they have just hilarious videos up there. I've never heard of this one, but, I like watching people fail. That's my favorite thing is fails.
Oh, yeah, those are great.
Yeah.
So
just watch people fall on their face and get hurt, break legs, arms. It's great.
Well, let's take a quick break here. Let's pick it up, and we'll look at the fails here right after these words.
All right, welcome back to J&M. I thought I'd just sneak ahead of Jason and do the intro this time.
Yeah. Hey, so we were talking about fails, and you I always love to go to YouTube for the fail armies.
Yeah.
I mean, the fail armies are great, whether they're always, snow, animals, whatever the case is.
People is, I like animals. I don't want to see animals get hurt, but people are mean, and I like watching them hurt themselves. There's nothing better than that.
Yeah, like the skateboarding ones where they go up and they fall on their face. It's going to be disastrous at first.
It's like, why were you trying to go down a 20-foot wall on a skateboard anyway? It's like,
right.
What?
Right. Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah. So, when we look at that, those have just an amazing amount of views, and it's just clip after clip after clip. And
Millions.
It's always funny to see. It's sort of like getting kicked in the groin. No matter how many times you see it, it's still funny.
It is. Yeah. But it's not funny to get kicked in the groin. It's funny to watch somebody else get kicked in the groin.
Right. If somebody just runs up and kicks you in the balls, that's funny to me.
Right?
Yeah. You don't want to be that guy, but it's funny when you see that, and it never fails.
And it's better if it's a midget. I don't know why. If a midget kicks you in the balls.
Yeah.
Why is that?
You know what? I think there's a lot of things that I don't know what it is with midgets, and I don't know if you can say midgets anymore. I keep saying this. I'm like, I don't know how long we're going to be on.
I'm going to say midget
before we get banned. I'm like, we're going to get banned.
It's not a negative thing. It's a positive. People like midgets. That's just the truth. I do.
Are you going to try to spin it that way? I'm like, you know what? Because we think you're awesome, we get to call you midgets.
That's right.
Not little people, not dwarves, but.
I mean, you can call me giant or obese or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't care.
You're a fairly big guy.
Yeah.
You're what, 6'3", 275?
Yeah.
Hooah.
Yeah. Starting to work out.
So as far as your fails go that you find on YouTube, is there anything there that you actually follow, or is it just stuff that you go out and
yeah, trampoline fails, I think, are the best fails. Watching somebody go up an unnatural amount of altitude and then come back down to earth and then screaming away. I mean, you can't beat that.
Yeah, the trampoline fails are always good.
Our insurance agent, actually, we had a trampoline, and our insurance agent, they were trolling the neighborhood or spying on us or whatever. We had one without a net around it. They knew that somehow, and they sent us a letter saying, if you don't get rid of your trampoline or put a net around it, we're canceling your coverage. We were like, wow.
Wait, they sent somebody out to go
evidently
check
they
out
did.
The house?
Evidently they did. Yeah.
Or
looked on
thing?
Google Earth or something.
Is that a yearly thing with it?
I don't know. I was really shocked. I was like, how do you know we have a trampoline without nobody jumped on it, so we ended up giving it away. But our insurance agent knew we had a trampoline with no net on it.
My son has wanted a trampoline forever, and every time I look at those and what the insurance rates are with the trampoline, I have no interest in having a trampoline. I have no interest in dealing with not only the trampoline insurance, that my son is going to go do a backflip, 10 feet and
Break his neck
and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And I know everybody's like, go get the net. And I'm like, I don't want to do it.
The net helps. I watch, we get a nice view of our neighbor's backyard from here, and you can watch them take a header once in a while. But for the most part, the net, no, I don't spy on my neighbors, but the net does help.
I sit here all day long and I wait for those damn kids to go hit that trampoline. I'm like, yes, it's a header.
Yes.
I've got a new 1 million view YouTube coming up.
If only I filmed it. Yeah, I'd have to ask her permission to film it.
Just put a camera over there. It's public property. Just send it in there and be like, yeah, nobody's going to notice.
Yeah.
So, you ended up giving it away. Is that what you said?
We did, yeah. Yep, we gave it away. We just put it out on Facebook. Come and get it for free.
Some of the things that I've seen people do to try to get around that, and I don't know if it really saves anything one way or the other, but they're starting to sink those trampolines down in the ground.
Thought about that, but I'm too lazy.
Yeah, well, then you've got this massive pit that fills up with either mud or rats or everything else. And still, I think, when you, at the end of the day, you still have a kid, that's bouncing up, 4 or 5 feet that's going to still end up
There's still
on
velocity.
The ground. You're still cutting it down by half, but it's also not as fun. I saw that and I thought it was a great idea, and I was like, oh, what a great idea. And then I jumped around. I was like, well, this just feels dumb. Like, not having that actual elevation on the rest of the trampoline, it just doesn't feel right to me.
I suppose that's probably what it feels like on the moon. You just get an extra little bounce. I don't know.
So we were going back. Let's dip back over to some of the Barstool sports stuff. We were talking about even Colin Cowherd there. Colin Cowherd has some big announcement that's supposed to be coming up. I think either this week or next week, and he was talking about going to Barstool Sports. And what I had liked about that, and some of the things that we were trying to develop, especially on our podcast, is what type of content are we going to do? How are we going to work the different types of content that we are going to have? Where are we going to go with this? And I think there's a lot of different ways that we can go. But when you look at Barstool Sports, it used to be Barstool Sports really has become what ESPN was in the 80s, with today's relevancy. Now that we have all these other forms and you're not being so confined by i.e. a cable network or a network or, even massive amounts of corporate money that say this is the way that you have to play. I get it. If that's the way they run the network, that's not a problem. I understand. But when you're talking about, a ground show like where we're at and we're trying to build and we're trying to do different things and we're trying to play different angles, I mean, having those confined boxes for us would be a bad space. And, when we started talking, we had decided, should we look at some of the radios? Should we talk to some networks? And we kind of bounced that around, and that wasn't something that I was really interested in because I've been down that road, not only with radio and network, and I know you have too.
We wouldn't last long on the radio. We'd get fired real fast.
Yeah, and I think you get into some of this content where, when we call her daddy, it's much more relevant to people rather than I think people are really sick of the main network stuff prepackaged that you have to be this 1950s mom. And I think when you look at Call Her Daddy is a perfect example of that, when they're getting explicit about exactly what's happening in the bedroom and they can lay it all out there. And you can listen to, most people now have headphones on. You don't know what you're listening to. So it's a way to, take in information that you wouldn't necessarily hear from everywhere else that nobody knows that you're listening to.
It's a secret.
Yeah.
Incidentally, her podcast is on the front page of barstoolsports.com, so it must be a huge hit for them.
Well, I think it would have to be. I mean, we were talking about, you said what?
Top 5
or top 8. And how many millions of views is that? I mean, is it a huge deal? Because I was surprised that even at number 5, she didn't have that many subscribers, considering
144,000 subscribers is what she has, but it pays per million views typically. So per 1 million views, roundabout is about $7,000 of income.
Yeah.
Now it has to cover production costs and all that kind of stuff, but.
And that's always
that's a significant amount of money.
Yeah, no, I think it's an awesome achievement to be able to pull something like that off. But what we don't have, and what's nice about, when you have the networks or you have the radio or you have that platform, even like Barstool Sports that's been built up, is the fact that you have that massive launch into 100 or 200,000 people right off the bat.
Yep.
You're not building literally one by one by one by one. You got to send it over to your mom and be like, Mom, listen to this.
But you could, I mean, like we are. That's an advantage. We're building it up one by one by one, and we have a pretty good audience already.
And your mother's going to listen to this week's episode? Are you going to tell your mom about to call her daddy?
Yeah. I'm not going to tell her about it, but I'm not going to tell her not to listen to this episode.
You know, when we had talked about that, you had heard that, and I think your jaw was like, holy shit, Jason.
Yeah.
What the fuck did you just send me?
You're going to get me in trouble.
And I was just like, I was kind of dumbfounded too. And I was like, oh, did you hear the Roman commercial? I mean, the Roman commercial was even better than I think. You know what? I do want to give a shout out to Roman, just because I think it's great that when you're able to come on and you're able to back podcasts, especially independent podcasts like that, and let the talent, if you will, be able to write that commercial. I guarantee you, nobody over at Roman said, oh, let him come in your pussy and spooge all over the place. Nobody wrote that for Roman. And I can only imagine the people at Roman going, oh, but it works.
It works. Yeah.
And it definitely works with her. And so I think, I got to hand it to companies that come out that are able to do that. And, I have seen a few Roman commercials on TV.
Yeah.
Late night.
They're tame. Those are tame compared to this one.
Yeah. Let's insert that yet again.
Huh? Hold on. Roman is coming through. Hello. My name is Roman, and if your penis doesn't last long, have no fear. I am here. Okay, guys, Roman swipes, if your boyfriend, if you listening to this, if you're splooging a little, if all of a sudden you're like, don't do it, don't fucking do it, and then kaboom, you're fucking splooging in that pussy or splooging in that asshole, and it's like a disaster. You have no dick game. Have no Roman swipes. Guys, they are clinically proven to help you last longer in the bedroom. They are effective, easy to use, and fast. Do not require a prescription. They are super discreet in unmarked packaging, so you can put it in your fucking pocket, you little weirdo. No more. And then you go to Pound Town till the sun fucking rises. Woo!
As a guy, I was listening to that. I went, I feel less of a man now. I don't know if having a girl talk about your ED deficiencies and coming quickly might be the best advertising shot to men, but if it's down and it works, okay.
Well, there's a lot of guys out there. I'm not one of them. I mean, never.
There's no small penises are coming quickly here.
No, definitely not.
But we do support the little blue pills.
Yeah. Where was I going with that?
I don't know.
It's a refreshing. This stuff used to be in the closet. You had to go to your doctor to get stuff, and is it a horribly embarrassing talk? I can only imagine. And to speak so openly about it now is kind of refreshing, I guess.
Not really. I think if I have to critique the ad about Roman there, I was listening to that, and here's this one. If you haven't seen her, she's insanely hot. She is an insanely hot blonde.
Yeah.
And there's nothing probably more demoralizing than having this insanely hot blonde being like, well, if you have erectile dysfunction and you come quickly and you're just basically a loser, don't feel bad. Roman's here to save you. You'll never sleep with me, but Roman will hook you up. And I was like, I went, what is going on here? And it doesn't. I don't think guys talk quite like women is honestly about their open sex, because I know a lot. I don't really know any guys that have taken a little blue pill, but I know obviously with the market out there, my point to that being, I know that they take it, but they sure as hell don't talk about it.
They don't brag about it.
No. And I wonder how many times guys take those and they just don't say a word. Like,
to
everything's
anybody.
just fun.
Oh,
Yeah. So, we're not going to talk about that.
No, absolutely not. Charlie Sheen talks about it. I mean, he's the only one I've really heard brag about the little blue pills, and because all the drugs that he takes, he has to take the.
Well, I mean, when you're ripping cocaine off of 18-year-old bodies, I mean, that's
makes it difficult.
It would make it difficult to probably perform under those conditions.
Yeah.
And you're sleeping with 20,000 porn stars. I mean, that kind. There's
it has an effect,
right? I mean, I think if you're going to date Charlie Sheen, you know what you're getting into. I mean, I don't even think you really have to ask. Are you dating one or two or three people, Charlie? No, I'm dating like 25.
Yes.
This morning.
That's just my morning. Yeah. Wow.
Well, I think the open and honesty thing that we talk about is, and I think as a lot of guys is kind of we're talking about, Roman, and trying to get wherever you need to bolster yourself up, obviously in the room, whether it's the hardware problem, right? If you got to do little blue pills or Viagra or whatever that case is,
they make pumps too.
Yeah. Or what I'll consider to be the software problem, the stuff in your head and communication, everything else. Those two things, both the hardware and the software, for guys, we don't really talk about. We never have. And I started going to therapy a year ago, and it was probably one of the best things that I've ever done. And I was one of these hard ass guys that I'm not going to therapy. The hell with this. And I didn't have a bad family. I didn't have anything like that. It was just to a point where you get so stressed out with work and you've done everything so far that you just literally hit a wall. And just having beers and just having these conversations with guys, that just wasn't doing it anymore for me. And I don't think, we come out and we kind of, open ourselves up. And to be able to have that communication skills and be able to bust through in a way that to your significant other was just a huge deal that, I think a lot of guys are just missing. And I think the shame comes with that. There's that shame of going out, well, I'm not going to go to, a therapist. Not that I'm saying I'm going to scream out or, put on my Instagram my little blue pill unless I'm sponsored by Roman. But we don't talk enough about it. And I think there's a lot of times that, it's really detrimental to us as guys, not only in the bedroom or where those things lead, because if we can't ask what we want in the bedroom, right? I mean, I've been married 22, 23
years,
right? And just sending call her daddy.
Yeah,
right?
got me in trouble.
Yeah, it was going to get you in trouble, right? So now imagine you want to try something out sexually in the bedroom. If I can tell you this, being able to talk to your girl behind closed doors with an open and honest vernacular, if you will, and being able to say, this is what I want, and this is what I need, those are healthy things, but it's really hard to talk about. I mean, you got to go, yeah, could you stick something in my ass for me? Did you
Wow.
Did you hear my podcast, The Roadmap to My Asshole? It's super trusting. It's super, you got to throw it out there, and it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, you could be talking about the intimacy of just, a blowjob. Like, I get this, when somebody says, well, how do you like it? Like, I don't.
Without teeth, preferably. I mean, keep the buck teeth in.
Right. That's sort of the guy's kind of standard. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, isn't, and you get all uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
how
do you specify?
Right. How do you specify that?
I had a friend, used to be a friend, and I was using his computer one day. And you know how when Google, when you type how to, and it'll make suggestions based on your previous searches. I typed in how to give a blowjob. It came up. I was like, whoa, this is a 45-year-old single guy. And I'm thinking to myself, why is a 45-year-old guy Googling how to give a blowjob? And I'm thinking, maybe he hasn't come out of the closet yet. Maybe. I don't know. Or maybe scarier yet, he did that so that he could give instructions to somebody else on how to do it. And either way, it was scary to me if you knew the character. But yeah, it was a little weird at that point.
Well, the reason I brought it up is when I was listening to Call Her Daddy and what she was talking about in this particular episode. She was talking about how to ride guys, and this is all from the female's perspective of how they can come and how they can control what feels good for them when they're on top. And so I'm sitting there listening to it, and it's great. It's all about her. I got it. But then they kind of get into, well, this is what I think the guys like, and they're talking about it. I'm like,
That's
no,
probably not it at all.
that sucks when you guys do that. But
give me an example.
She was talking about, they were in this particular part when she's on top and she's riding him like the pogo stick in this particular one. And I go, when somebody does that, it doesn't feel right. And the reason it doesn't feel right, and from either partner's perspective, is the fact that you're not really doing what works for either you or her. You just have this kind of stigma that, oh, I'm on top and I'll just hop up and down and everything will be fine.
Yeah.
So from the woman's perspective in this particular episode was them working on, with women on really how to control your climax and what feels good with you. And specifically, when you get on top, they were telling about positions, about laying down and not necessarily doing two different things, but working on, when you're on top, do what feels good for you, because, really
you got to take turns.
Right.
It's kind of like a 69. It's like, neither of you are really having that great of a time because you can't concentrate on what's being done to you.
Right. And I think, if a girl's going to get on top, she needs to be taking care of herself.
Do it for her. Yeah.
Do it for her. And I'm all for that. That's her moment. Get on top and work on
right
her
off
moment.
into the sunset.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's your job to come when you're up there, because I can't really do anything. It's sort of like, this is all for you. That's great, because I'm pegged to the bottom here, so I can't move. You're stuck and you're locked in, and you're like, I don't know what to do here.
There is a certain feeling to being on, stuck on bottom like that, and that you're, she's the primary one. How do I say that? Man, 23 years of marriage, I've forgotten these titles. But
you see, I don't think you talk enough. I think that's the problem.
That's probably it.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back
good.
to who's on top and how right after this.
Restart this. Yeah, welcome back to J&M. We are talking about who's on top and how. And no, that's not an Indian name. That is the subject.
Like I said, you're going to get us banned. If it's not the cum shots or anything else, it's going to get us banned. It's going to be that. It always kind of makes me laugh. When you listen to Call Her Daddy, we can say pussy, fox, shit, all the other things, but what you can't say is don't say midget.
Yeah, an Indian midget. Oh my goodness! If you have an Indian midget,
that's you guys went too far over there.
Oh yeah,
stop it.
Yeah,
but when
that's where we have to stop.
This is kind of what she was talking about from her perspective is I don't think a lot of guys talk about it. I mean, I'm sure there's a sex episode out there for guys, but a lot of times it just turns into just kind of the crude guy bar tab sex stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it does get missed on the fact that not taking the time to focus on them and what they want inside of their needs. And then more importantly, being able to communicate what you want inside the bedroom. That's why, when you talk about, specifically, getting a blowjob, and if they're not doing it right and it sucks, what do? You go,
wow, you really suck. No, that's not a compliment.
Yeah, right. No, that's not a good thing. But
chances of ever getting another one after that are slim.
That's not going to go over well, and it's probably not going to be,
Maybe you need to Google how to give a blowjob and send that to.
Well, and then you get into the dangerous porn land of well, do I go out and I find this girl and this looks really good and she's really hot, and then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, can you do this? Can you try this out and see how that works? Yeah, I don't think that's going to go over very well either.
No.
So I think, when you kind of get there, and this kind of goes on to that whole early on dating thing, is sort of building that real kind of trust vernacular to go to those weird places.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's much easier, as I have gotten older, younger girls definitely don't have, maybe the experience and all the stuff to emotionally be able to talk to a guy. And I think this is a two-way street too. More so on the guys. The guys aren't communicating to them. They just put up with, listen, I'm going to come. Whether it happens in 2 minutes or 10 minutes, it doesn't really matter, because if you suck at it.
Are we talking about a 20-year-old girl here with you? Or?
20, 30, 40.
Two minutes? Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on what's going on. But, I think when you have to sit there and you have to explain it, explain what you like, it's so hard to do that. And then not to feel like
you're a professor of
right. Well, you don't want to be a
relations.
professor of sexual, fantasies or anything else, and be like, how much porn have you watched? Give me your porn history, right?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And we delete that on an hourly basis. That's automatic delete. It's very difficult to sit there and have those conversations. And I think you have to. I mean, so many times, if
How
you
do you
want,
start that? How do you start that conversation? That's what I'm curious about. I mean, I go up to my wife is already mad at me over sending, and maybe it's because I said Jason said to send this to you. I said Jason says to send to you. That could be part of it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Somehow I'm always the brunt of everything. It's
Yeah.
always. It was Van Zetten was behind this, wasn't he?
I did that so that I could blame you should she become enraged.
Yeah. So how do you start the conversation? Well, I don't think you start the conversation of this sucked, and I think it's even harder. Here's the harder thing: how do you start the conversation if somebody's not good at it? Then how do you bring it up to them in a respectful manner, being like, listen, because you know that she wants to please you. I mean, it's not that she's not wanting to do that by any means. It is something that, she wants to be good and she wants to make you happy. So you go, and then you don't want to hurt her feelings by any means.
So maybe it's just like anything else. You're supposed to, instead of responding to people with a negative, you respond with positives. And you be like, the thing you did with your throat or your lips or your tongue was really good. Can you do that more?
Right, but
less teeth, more tongue.
Right, less teeth, more tongue. Instead of 2 fingers, can we do 3?
Yeah, we could raise raise it to like hairbrush handles type stuff.
Right. I don't know how you approach that. I mean, that's kind of where you get into. You hope that you have like an honest relationship. But I think there's this.
I mean, you don't bring this up on the first date. I mean, when you're sitting at the bar having a drink with some girl.
Well, you might. Honestly,
you might find a freak that actually likes.
Well,
that kind of stuff.
I mean, forgetting that, but I think you could certainly. I don't know if you want to get into sex on the first date, but I think you can be talking about sex on dates 3, 4, and 5 because you're both new.
What's wrong with sex on the first date?
I didn't say there was anything wrong with sex on the first date. I said nothing about that.
Okay, so
I'm just simply saying.
Why is that frowned upon? I don't know.
Well,
what if you hit it off and you're like, this person's my soulmate, and you know it right then and there, and
I don't think there's anything wrong with sex on the first date. I think it's probably, I don't know if I want to say it's a good thing, but you're insanely attracted to somebody if you're having sex, and I don't think that's entirely a bad thing. I think people, don't really kind of look at what the emotional response is. That you've gone out and you've really connected with somebody.
It's not like you do. I'm not saying do it every night. I'm just saying if once in a blue moon, if once in 5 years you meet somebody and you're just you just click and it's instant attraction for both of you, and it's like
and I think that's
not that I
would say everybody that probably is listening to this has one of those stories where we're really connected and there's this great emotional connection and it was good. And I think the other thing is as we get older, you kind of need this more emotional connection to sex. Before, like, sex is sex.
When you're young, it seems more shallow.
Right, yeah. All I want to do is I just want to go fuck and I want to come, and that's all I want to do. I don't really care about talk. And then as you get older, you're like,
you want the emotional connection.
I've been there and done that.
Connection.
Right. And you find out, and so when we start talking about, how do you have these conversations, you want to be really connected more on an emotional level earlier on inside of the relationship early on, so you can have that conversation.
And girls are figuring that out because a lot of girls now want older guys. The dad bod's a popular thing. They say in the 40s is the new 20s, and I think part of that is because they're realizing that the 40-some-year-olds understand that connection and can connect with them on a different level.
Yeah, I think you get up above 40, and it's sort of like, we've done enough of the one night stands.
Yes.
And you get there, and you want something more, and you want to have that communicative ability. And I do think certainly women by a large margin have the ability to do that more than what guys do. And maybe that's just a simple maturity factor that really when girls might be at 35, you get to 45, and you're kind of on that same plane finally at some place that you can have that. I also think you just have to screw up a shitload of relationships to be able to have that. I mean, you've got to have good ones that you blow. You got to have bad ones that you blow. You got to have you got to have this large swath of things that when you sit down there and you go,
you have knowledge.
You got knowledge about it, and
it's just like anything. It takes practice.
takes practice, and it also takes courage to come out and have the conversations too.
That's true.
I mean, I think if you're going to go out and date, I think you need to have these conversations. You don't need to go run and sleep together, but we're new. How are we going to talk to each other without offending each other early on? Because I think that's always a tough thing, And if it's not sex, it's do I look good? Are you liking what I'm wearing? Do you like what I eat? Do you like what I make for food? All of those types of things,
It comes back to the love languages. You've got
Right.
a bunch of different love languages.
Love languages,
Talk.
attachment theory.
Yep.
You can take your pick on a lot of that. And I'll tell you, through therapy and stuff that I had went into, attachment theory came up, and, I was picking just awful women. I mean, they
We
were
all
just,
have.
Yeah, no, it was bad. I mean, and it got to a point. I was like, I had this little epiphany through therapy, and it was a very simple thing of why am I picking bad women? And then all of a sudden it was like, well, what am I attracted to? And in my particular case, you and I think this is a lot of things with guys, that you're attracted to broken women, therefore you think you can save them.
Same with women. They do the same thing with
Right,
guys.
right. And so, attachment theory basically says that there's 3 types of people out there. There's secure, there's anxious, and there's avoidant types of people. And 50% of the people are secure, 25% are anxious, and 25% are avoidant. And inside of those attachment theories, the avoidant and the anxious types are always drawn together, which is oil and water. In other words, somebody feels like, hey, you're too good for me. I can't believe you're with me. And the other person says, you need to slow down. So what's the natural response? I want to pull you closer while the other one's trying to push away.
Yep.
What does that do? It creates nothing but disaster and chaos and drama inside the relationship. And so kind of when I was going through this, I was able to say, oh, well, 95% of my problem was stop picking broken women. And you kind of get to a point and you're like, duh. I mean, what's hard about that? Well, it's hard when she's, a 6 foot insanely hot blonde that you go, I don't care. I can save you.
At least tonight.
Right. And I think it's this thing, I think this built-in chivalrous thing as guys that we think that we have to do. And we all think that we have these superpowers that we can come in and we can save you as women, and we can't.
No, that's true. We can't save them, but
what you can do, and this is where it gets into, you've been doing this a little bit longer, is you find out that it becomes a friendship, and then it really turns into more of a partnership, and you want to have somebody in there that wants to be your partner, right? So it's beyond the sex, it's beyond the friendship. You really respect and you really want somebody there with you, and you want to have that emotional response. And when you get to that point and it all becomes clear, you're like, I can now sit down and I can talk with somebody. Not even this is not a dating thing. This is not just sitting down and having dinner, and I can go around 2 or 3 people, and within about the first 5 minutes I can go, you're secure, you're anxious, you're not, and I go, I'm not even gonna mess if you were going to date people, you can identify it now almost immediately and go, no, because I know what my type is. I have an anxious personality, right? And so I'm always wondering, well, it's hard for me to, I'm always panic. I can't believe you're with me. You have all these internal things. But the other 50% of the people are secure, so you can go with that. You just want to make sure, from my perspective, that you don't end up with somebody that's avoidant, where they're saying, I need
Pushing
space.
away.
Yeah, I need space. Don't come too close. They're always, kind of
create a
critiquing
vortex
you.
of-
Right.
yeah.
They're always making lists in the back of their mind about you. They're always being like, this is what's happening, and that, you're not paying attention to that. And so when you don't pay attention to those types of things, you end up in these shitty relationships, and you don't ever really analyze why we're doing what we're doing, and we just haven't stepped back.
I need to go to therapy. I think you
yeah.
convinced me, because you're talking about things that I guess I haven't thought of. I guess I didn't know I had any kind of a problem with communication, but evidently I do. So
Yeah, I think honestly, you know, I've started talking about my experiences publicly probably about a year ago. Just, and again, I bring it up that you don't have to be beat by your dad, or you don't have to have,
Mm-hmm.
you know, acid beads stuck in your closet. You don't have to have, you have all of these experiences that you just kind of hit a wall, and all of a sudden you just have limited resources. You know, I was listening to Howard Stern, and he just did an interview with Paul McCartney, and they were specifically talking about the song Help that John Lennon had put out. And they were playing it, and they were literally talking about this, that, you know, here was John Lennon at roughly, you know, 30, 40, somewhere in there, and he writes this song Help, and Paul McCartney was talking about, you know, when I was a kid, you know, I had it all together until I hit, you know, later in life, and I had nowhere to turn. I need help. And not just anybody, I need help. And the song goes on to talk about that, and having that perspective, you know, kind of goes, you know, this has been something that's going on 40, 50 since, you know, the beginning of time, is guys that we don't talk about. And here's John Lennon talking about in the song Help that he needs help, and not just anybody, to come out and, you know, to heal and to be able to have these conversations. And, you know, I tell everybody, I'm like, you know, you don't have to go to therapy, you know, every week, and it doesn't have to be super heavy stuff. It can be, you know, once a month, or whatever it is for what your needs are.
I think just to learn to communicate those types of issues. I mean, communication is communication. It doesn't necessarily have to be about a specific topic.
And I think where I found it insanely important, a little bit too late, you know, you've sort of gotten through, because, but look at how many people split up, whether divorced, they've been together, whatever, around 10, 11, 12 years.
Yeah.
There's kind of that point in there, that so I say, you know, that 10 to 15 year kind of danger zone.
There is, and you feel it when you're in a marriage that long too. You can feel it at the 10, 15 year. You know, we had some close calls. We were like, you know, I don't know, is this worth it or not?
Right.
So yeah,
And it's
still there.
And depending on when you hit that 10 to 15 years, you know, you're probably somewhere around 35, and you've been together. You just haven't had somebody else's perspective to kind of walk you through.
When you kind of think, hey, I'm 35 years old. What if I don't want to be with this person till the rest of my life? Now is a good age
Yeah.
to get out in that dating world again. And I'm telling you, it's not. I don't care what you're thinking at the time.
It's not.
Dating is horrible. I can't even imagine going through that again. But yeah, you definitely feel it at 35 years old.
And it,
Question
whether it's, you know, you can take that whole swath, I would say probably even 35 to 45, both men and women in there. And I think it's really important for guys to go out and, you know, if you can, see a therapist. And, you know, I'm just going to make a plug that, you know, if you're out there looking for help, you know, where I started is I went to a place called Psychology Today, and you kind of put in a whole bunch of different parameters in there. You know, I'm in this zip code, and there's all sorts of different therapies, which is sort of tough. I mean, we could do a whole different topic just on this, but, you know, if you need a place to start with Psychology Today. You can put in your zip code, and, you know, you can do enough research on your own to figure out all the, you know, there's 30,000 different acronyms that come with these guys.
Yeah.
And you can start filtering down and drill into what it is that you're looking for. And,
Absolutely.
You know, in my particular case, you know, I specifically looked for a hot, younger therapist that had 10 or 15 years. You know why?
No.
Because I knew that I had, just like you, sitting there talking about how do I give a blowjob, or I'm about to take this terrifying step to go see a therapist. If I'm going to do this, I want to be full on terrified that this is really going to force me to sit there in front of a girl that is hot, to spill your guts about all the stuff.
That sounds brutal.
And because of that, I'm able to have the type of, at least the vernacular, I think that has made me a much better man, and have these type of conversations than...
I'll tell you, this is an uncomfortable conversation for me.
I can see it. Like,
yeah.
I can see that you're back there squirming.
I mean, partially because some of it's hitting home, and it's a realization like, whoa, maybe I don't have that communication I thought I had. And, you know, part of it's realizing what I do have also, you know, not having to go back in the dating world. But, you know, therapy gives me the willies. I don't know. It shouldn't. I mean, 10 years ago, my wife and I did a therapy together, and I think I won. There's always a winner and a loser to therapy, you think, when you go into it. But yeah, I don't think we ever did get right down to the heart of issues.
Yeah, and I think, in your particular case, and anybody listening to this that might be thinking about doing, I wouldn't necessarily say go run to couples therapy. That's not the first step.
No,
go separate first, and start there. Look for what you're looking for, and just start. And that will lead to, at some point, maybe you do sit down with couples therapy, or in your case, maybe you won't need couples therapy. So anyway, Psychology Today, if you're out there listening for anything that you need help or you need a starting point, that's a great starting point. Monty, do you have anything, final thoughts here for the day?
Yeah, just like myself, I just realized I have to open up more and maybe reconsider the therapy myself. It is scary at first, but if you survived it, I might be able to survive it also.
Yeah, I still go. I go once a week.
All right.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week right here on J&M.